I'm here today with Peter Adams. He is the CEO and founder of Lighthouse. So Peter, on American Dreams, we're always interested in learning about the entrepreneur, what drove them to do what they did, so I'd like, for the sake of the listeners, you to spend a few minutes talking about your background and starting from your schooling and what led you up to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, actually. So I spent my early childhood years there. And one of the big seminal moments for me was when I was 16 was the first time I'd ever seen the ocean down in Mexico. And once I saw that, I was kind of never going back to the wheat fields. Not that I didn't like the wheat fields, but the ocean was really special. So that's always been a big part of my life. When I applied to go to college, I applied all around the periphery of the United States, and I was eventually accepted at UC Santa Cruz. So that's where I did my undergraduate studies. Got degrees both in biology and chemistry there, and really learned to have a much broader appreciation for the arts. I really enjoyed my art history classes and some psychology classes and linguistics and stuff, so I got kind of an interesting science and Renaissance type background. Being a lifelong learner, I ended up with a degree. I actually went to Oxford's Advanced Management program, which is kind of their executive MBA program in England. Did that, which I really enjoyed. Got a very good international experience on that. And I've just been part of kind of a non-traditional community of learners since then. The Hecht Associates and the School for Generative Leadership and Management. So just all these different things really brought about kind of an interesting background, interesting perspective. Back in the early days, I started out working in the science labs at UC Santa Cruz, in the graduate science labs, and I was doing some primary research and really thought I was going to be a biochemist. And that was really kind of where my passion laid. In doing a lot of the work there, I was also automating some of the lab equipment with computer systems. In the early days, goes way back in the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of the lab equipment stuff was all manual. It had data ports on it, but generating the reports, the output, a lot of it was graphing by hand and stuff, and I thought that was really tedious. So my college roommate happened to be in the computer science program, and he helped me, and we worked together, and we automated some of that equipment. Really made it much easier, and I really learned to look at the computer system as a tool for improving productivity, because I liked what I could do with it. I was not so much enamored with the tool itself, but the application was really special.
I want to step back. So your major was not in the field of computer science?
No, not at all.
So you're a self-taught programmer then?
Well, yes. I mean, I did obviously have some schooling in that. I did take some computer science courses, but really it was so I could learn how to apply the tool, because I was much more interested in the outcome than the tool itself. And it led me on kind of a circuitous path to get where I am now.
So in your business, putting your stake in the ground, what point in time did you say, I'm going to start this company, Lighthouse?
Well, that's a really interesting story, I think. I've been working for a company called Shared Medical Systems, and two things happened at the same time. I'd had a really good manager for about 6 months, and then she left. And I'd seen good management, and then I'd seen some not so good management, and I really missed the good management and the leadership and the mentorship that she'd been able to provide us. That happened at the same time. This is back about 1983. The insurance companies came out with ICD-9 codes, which is their first attempt at cost containment. And I had a number of hospitals that were losing money, and we had one hospital that was making money. Now this is at this time, step back a little bit. So I was working with Shared Medical Systems. It was a common back-end platform to all the hospitals. So basically, there's the same system everywhere. Why was one hospital making money? Why were all the other hospitals losing money? This was a question I had to find out, because there was an anomaly here. So I ended up spending a good portion of my summers in Arizona working down there to understand what this hospital was doing. I figured they must have been doing something illegal because they're making too much money. They were taking cash discounts on purchases. They were giving huge bonuses to all the employees. They set up charitable contributions to try and get rid of some of the cash. And this is a hospital. This is really unheard of. So I'd talked with the CFO, and he and I had become reasonably good friends. And he said he'd taken our standard system and implemented it with a cost-controlled, direct cost type of mentality and approach, so he knew what it cost him to deliver every procedure in his hospital. I thought that was really fascinating. What made it even really cooler was when he took that, put his procedures into two piles, one where he made money, one where he lost money. He then went across town to the competing hospital and said, I'm going to give you this body of work and resources to help you get good at it. In exchange, you give me some of the procedures where I make more money. So in essence, he made both hospitals money. Now, to me, that application of systems and data and thinking about the business and understanding what mattered, that really is at the core of what information technology should enable.
So Peter, I need to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to jump more back into this, helping to reinvent and define companies, and also the birth of your company, Lighthouse, and what they do. We'll be right back after these messages. We're visiting today with Peter Adams, the CEO and founder of Lighthouse. Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Peter Adams. He's the CEO and founder of Lighthouse. And Peter, in the first segment, we were talking about your relationship with shared medical systems, and you were trying to understand how one out of the three hospitals that you saw were making money, the other two losing. And as you began to set this system and process, it also was giving you some inspiration for stepping out and setting up a new company.
Right. Yeah, the fundamental purpose of technology, any technology, even a pencil, a piece of paper, whatever it is to make people more productive, to enable new capabilities, or to mitigate risk. And ideally, it should be a combination of all those things. So when you look at how technology is applied today, most of the times when it's applied, it's just applied at a bare minimum level without the understanding of what can be produced, because people lack the understanding of what they're trying to accomplish in business in large part. And so really with Lighthouse, I'm trying to bridge that gap. I want to be on the business side of the equation, leveraging the body of technology that's available to produce business outcomes for people. So that's what we do.
Are most medical systems on the same platform, the software platform, or is there an industry standard? Does it vary from?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different software platforms on medical. This is one of the problems that we're facing in the medical space right now, is the plethora of systems, particularly in the smaller facilities. A number of years ago, Obama, and before that, even the Clintons, had come out with some directives to basically put these systems, medical record systems, EMRs, you typically hear them called, to put these systems in place to try and get some sort of consolidation in the space so that we can share data back and forth securely and more easily. That's been a very big challenge, because in the medical space in particular, most physicians and smaller medical groups don't have the resources to do that.
Mm-hmm. So when you begin working on this project with shared medical systems, first of all, were you out of the company at that time, coming back as an independent
No, I was
consultant?
I was still an employee, and that's when that was really the impetus for me starting Lighthouse. Was I saw that the light bulb went off, and I saw that the application of data, application of systems, what you were trying to accomplish with it in the business space was where I wanted to play, not on the technology side.
It's interesting, because so often you get people go into work every day, and they may see a change in management, something maybe happen within the organization, so they go from loving their job to hating their job, and you had that courage to step out and say, I'm going to put my own shingle up. But were you afraid of what if it doesn't work out?
No, I probably should have been. I figured I was unemployed when I got my first job, and I could be unemployed again, and I wasn't really that worried about it. I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I wanted to really shift the narratives around information technology to really being a tool for business. There's that nirvana promise of what information technology can do for you, which is, you bring it in, you get much more efficiency gains, you spend less money, you get all this incredible capabilities and outcomes, and life gets great. Except the standard out there is that doesn't happen. All you've done is shift the costs around. IT becomes a big expense and a burden to the enterprise, not necessarily a net contributor to the bottom line. I think the whole way people think about information technology is off. So I want to bring back the business focus along with enough technology understanding to be able to drive the outcomes that business needs.
You know, you're in a constant river of change. 1983, it was the mainframe computers, the personal PCs, and we scaled up to where we are today. We're actually, it seems like it went full circle when we're going back to the cloud there. So Peter, I need to take another break, but when we get back, I want to come back and discuss how do you stay constant and updated with your business model in this sea of change that we have going on right now. I'm visiting with Peter Adams. He's the CEO and founder of Lighthouse. We'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Peter Adams. He's the CEO and founder of Lighthouse. And Peter, in the early days, we're talking about how you got started with Lighthouse. It was an IT strategy, systems integration, but the venture capital community caught wind of your unique gifts and started to engage you in some of their roll-ups and M&A activities. And I want to spend a few minutes visiting because it's a challenge. The whole industry out there with the startups seems to be in flux right now, and you've been able to step in and with the unique ability you have with systems integration, really come and help take a fledgling startup and drive some success. And let's talk a little bit on this point about what approach do you use?
Thank you. So basically, having done a lot of work with venture-backed startups, all of whom really are playing a big game, they think they're going to IPO. Most actually don't IPO, they end up being acquired. And so we just had a huge body of work doing that and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Really what matters, I think, is the human factor. And this often gets overlooked in acquisitions and certainly by technologically oriented people. Businesses are communities of people that have some sort of leadership and guidance in a certain particular direction. It's not about the facts and the data and all the gathering all kinds of stacks of documents to mitigate liability. That's not what I'm after. What I'm after is the human being factor. Bain and McKinsey and a number of other groups state that mergers and acquisitions are only 25% successful. The biggest reason for failure is cultural mismatch and people misalignment. And that really means that to do an effective job in an M&A transaction where you're taking two cultures and combining them together, you have to start by talking to people. And so that's our approach. We sit down, we actually just talk to people. This is the process we've developed. We find it's kind of like that old joke they talk about consultants who come in and tell you what you already knew, and then they charge you a lot for it. So there's a lot of truth to that. And so we come in, we talk to the people to say, what's working, what's not working. Where do you think the problems are? How do you think they should be fixed? What's the future of the company? How do you see the vision? Right? And then we do that throughout all levels of the company. And it gives us a really great dashboard for what needs to be worked on. We also use self-assessments, which are very easy and not threatening. We give those regularly throughout the process. It really allows us to stay very honed in and focus on the people and the culture, which what a lot of people don't understand is the connection between culture and IT. Culture is largely a manifestation of the tools that we use as human beings. The single biggest tool in business today is IT. And so by shifting IT, I can shift the culture of a company. And again, this is the primary cause of failure, is that misalignment in culture. So let's start out and address that right off the get-go. And so whether we're combining companies that are on the East Coast or the West Coast or Canada and US or internationally or whatever it might be, doesn't matter. It's still just people. So we just talk to them, we understand what works on both sides, and then we figure out the combined entity, which is neither one nor the other, but now it's a new entity, and we'll build effective process, effective systems, and create the tools that promote that new culture that the company wants to have.
Would you say that most mergers that happen are in context of involuntary. They need to do it because something really is not working, or how, what percentage of the company would you say need to do it because of a system failure?
Companies buy other companies for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they just want the intellectual capital, like the IP, for example. Sometimes they want the research lab, sometimes they want the people, sometimes they want a distribution or a supply chain, sometimes they want the whole company and the brand. It really depends on why they're making the acquisition. But on the company being acquired, having a failure, certainly I have seen plenty of companies in the Bay Area that are planning a certain runway and they need to exit before the runway ends. And sometimes they make that, and sometimes they exit just after the runway ends and they don't get the valuations they were looking for.
So when you're working with the cultures, obviously, if it's a larger company acquiring the smaller one, I imagine that there is probably the biggest challenge is integration of technology and systems. How difficult is it to get everybody on that same page?
Oh, it's actually fairly difficult because there's always people that want to be acquired, who want to play in the new company, and there are people who don't. And so the more quickly we can come in and make those assessments and sort out who's who and who has the skills, then one of the secret ingredients, I think, when you're putting teams together is to have a team that comprises both the acquirer and the acquiree. And so you make that joint team, and you have to take some people on the acquired company and really give them some real authority in terms of what's going to happen in the future, assuming they have the raw competence for that. One of the things that really shows up to us is what I call the supremacy of the acquirer, which is where the acquiring company is always bigger, faster, smarter, stronger, better looking, whatever your metrics are. And when they buy a smaller company, one of the first things that the executives want is they want an effective integration that achieves the outcomes they were after. When that filters down through the ranks, the rank and file hear that is integrated at all costs. And because we're the bigger company, we must be doing things right, so we have to make them do what we do. That actually usually kills the goose that's laying the golden egg. And so we don't recommend that approach typically. We think there are things that the acquired company is doing quite well, which made them attractive in the first place. Let's figure out what those kernels are, let's preserve those, and integrate those into the new whole. When you have a huge disparity in size, sometimes you don't get that vote. But when the companies are closer in size, you can really make a new combined entity. It's much more interesting.
We just have a few minutes here. Ideal company for individual wanting that you'd like to work with, how large should they be?
Oh, I use headcount because of the disparity here in the Bay Area, but really between 50 and about 500 employees in the Bay Area is a really great size company for us.
And how does a person get a hold of you, Peter?
Oh, they can reach me on my email address, peter@lighthouseis.com, or they can call my cell phone, 831-818-5100. Pretty easy to get a hold of.
Been visiting here today with Peter Adams. He's the CEO and founder of Lighthouse, a company that focuses on assisting companies in M&A activity and also rolling up and just general advisory of how to improve performance. Peter, thanks for being on today's show.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back after these messages.
He's the world's most trustworthy man. Tax filing deadlines are scheduled around his vacation calendar. The IRS agent who audited his client apologized.
I don't always advise people on their taxes, but when I do, I save them every penny legally possible.
GrowCo CPAs and Advisors.
Come to GrowCo and stay wealthy, my friend.
Welcome back. Yeah, over the break, I was visiting with Peter Adams, and there was a part of the topic that we didn't touch on, and I feel it's so important, especially here in Silicon Valley, when we're trying to find people, you know, and talent acquisition, and you talked about a growing trend, and that is through partnerships. And so let's maybe visit how should a company be approaching talent acquisition through partnerships?
Leveraging on some of Jeffrey Moore's concepts of core versus context, where core are things that affect shareholder value and context doesn't. Things that are contextual in your business, typically on the administrative side of the house, you can outsource those kinds of functions if it's appropriate. Where you need core talent, that should be developed either internally, or you can leverage very tight strategic partnerships for that. When you're looking for a very particular narrow set of expertise, and you can encapsulate that with a good statement of work or description of the outcome you're after, I think then partnerships play a particularly strong point in business today.
Don't you run the risk in partnerships? So if you're on one system in technology and you're bringing in a partnership, how important is it that they be on the same page and operating with the same technology your company has?
Actually, believe it or not, that's actually not as important. Today, pretty much any of the standard technologies that business use are pretty much compatible, and we can move back and forth. So whether you're developing in a Microsoft environment or a Linux environment or a Mac environment, doesn't really matter anymore. We can bring that into the fold and share that with other applications. You know, there are some limitations, but it's not as much as it used to be. What has to really happen, I think, is really more the cultural alignment of the outcomes you're after, and then the tools become fairly self-evident. And really, again, I go back to, it's not the company, the parent company is not necessarily the smarter when sometimes the expertise they're bringing in really has certain reasons for certain tools they use, and you want to make sure you capture that and bring that together in a way that really produces the outcome you're looking for.
How would you help a company guide them on setting partner? At what stage would you come in?
Right. I'd like to be there just before they're inking the partnership deal to really help them understand what is the technological requirements for this and the cultural requirements. Number one is, what's the outcome we're after? This is one of the first questions I always have to ask. What are we trying to produce? Then I can look at the sets of tools that we do it with in one company and the other company, and we can figure out what's the best way to merge these tools together to get an effective outcome.
And typically when you're working with companies, what's the time of engagement that you feel it is needed really to make sure that things get smoothed over and helping to get things settled
Well,
down?
in a partnership type conversation, usually it's 4 to 6 months to really come in and get things working really well for both of them. We often are then asked to stick around for years longer even, but really I want to get them off the ground about that point in time. If I'm looking to shift the cultures of companies, either to prepare for acquisition or IPO, I'd like about 18 months to 2 years in advance to really embed what I call the controls and the processes in place and shift the culture of the company to get a higher valuation and be more attractive.
Okay, and I want to touch on what's happening in Silicon Valley in your perspective with the baby boomer transition and the change in technology. What's your take on the direction we're going to go in 3 to 5 years?
Well, we've seen a continuum from mainframes to minis to PCs to mobile devices to cloud applications, and I think that trend will continue. The more connected we are, the more enabled the mobile devices are. And I think when we look particularly at the millennials, the newest segment of the workforce, their orientation around mobile devices is really phenomenal, and their ability to use them effectively is great, but it flies kind of in the face of more traditional IT thinking. So there's definitely some maturation that has to happen at that level. There's also then how do you work with millennials and basically have them be an effective part of the team because they think differently. They're really after more about building an identity for themselves that's unique and producing an outcome over a long term for the entire company, which is a little bit different than we've had in the past with Generation X's and Y's and baby boomers and whatnot. And so it's a little different. So working on that edge is really challenging.
Peter, once again for the listeners, how do they reach?
Oh, they can reach me by email. It's petera@lighthouseis.com, or they can call me on my cell phone, 831-818-5100.
We've been visiting here today with Peter Adams. He's the founder and the CEO of Lighthouse.